Hi, I'm McCarthy, and I help people with their breakups. And today we're going to get into how to date hot women. This is clickbait, folks. I'm just putting this up because this is what people want to talk about right now. But it's really interesting because the reverse of that is how guys have no chance right now. How the average guy has no chance right now. It's unfair. There's a lot more virgins than ever before that have been virgins for a long time. Men are depressed, men are single, all the top men are getting all the women, and this is just coming up again and again, and over and again narrative. And so what I'm coming across is a lot of my clients that are in breakups, they're regurgitating this stuff. So they're over and over again, well, yeah, right now, like, you know, women just want too much, and they're pretentious, and they're this, and they're that. And it's like, so ask yourself this. Is there anyone in your friends, family, and colleagues that has a good girlfriend that you're like, damn, that's a stand-up one? Yeah, but he got lucky because of this, or he got... So it's possible. It's possible, right? So in this video, I just watched briefly women can't understand why men struggle with sex. All right, so this is just this huge narrative right now, and I'm gonna share the video in a minute, but I watched maybe 5-7 minutes of it, and this is just what keeps coming up in the feeds. They're just throwing this down everyone's throats, right? I mean, what's the objective? Here's the crazy thing. If anyone knows who David Goggins is, David Goggins is a Navy SEAL. He's written a book or co-authored a book about his life that's incredible. He's on Instagram, and he's in outstanding shape. He runs marathons. He does all kinds. He's just an all-world person, right? Like, he's got a hell of a resume. Talks a lot of shit and whatnot. Never talks about women or dating, by the way. But where I'm going with this, one of the big things about his book is I think he was about 20, 21. I could be wrong on the exact age. And he was about 300 pounds, and he was a pest control or what you'd call, yeah, I would call it pest control. And he talks about in his book, and he talks about basically being down and out and accepting that and whatnot, and then joining the military and becoming a Navy SEAL. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is he never talks about, oh, women didn't like me, oh, I had trouble with women or anything like that. He never brings up dating or looking for, like, there's not a whole lot of that, right? But if you see a picture of him, like I said, he was pest control for over a year, I think, gained 300 pounds. He just looks like a different person. So he went into the military, found his purpose, he became a Navy SEAL. And my point is there's a lot of stuff around all these guys that are sexless and they have no chance, and it's not fair. A lot of these guys are depressed. I'm not saying that it's not true, but what I'm saying, what's dangerous about it is men. That's a generalization. You need to identify as an individual what your situation is. Don't identify with a group. Identifying with a large group. It's like this guy said, David Goggins is a pest control, massively overweight, and he goes, all men are having this problem right now of getting out of their ruts. Now he's creating a situation where he has an excuse, and he's like, right? The reality is, I think since the beginning of time, guys at the bottom of the barrel, whether that's money, whether that's being a great warrior, whether that's being a great hunter and providing food, are probably going to get less action. They're saying now that's less action than ever before, according to data. And here's the thing. All these data points and all these research things, like right now in this video, it goes 28% of men in North America. I have a hard time believing that they were able to interview every man in North America to get data. I just don't think that that's doable. So when they go 28% of North America is sexless, it's like, how did you get everyone to answer that questionnaire? Now, the problem is, how are you going to let this motivate you or demotivate you? I mean, what's the question becomes, what's the solution? So blaming other women for being more pretentious and being more independent, yeah, that's a possible problem, right? Could it be society, culture, and sensationalism in the media and content building? Yes, that's a big part of it. Could it be creating these narratives where people are like, oh my God, yeah, it's so true. This is why I can't get a woman. I agree with Rational Male Clip. You need to individually take an honest self-assessment of your own life and actually see what you can do about things that you're not happy with. But these huge narratives of all men and all women, they're really damaging, because then people go, oh yeah, that's me. It's like, well, what do you want as an individual? The reason I brought up David Goggins, here's a guy that was 300 pounds, was in pest control, never is talking about like his lack of women or thereof, ends up being this Navy SEAL, writes a book, but really in his early 20s, his life's kind of a shamble, right? He's a loser technically, but he turned it around. But if he was able to identify with one, hey, things aren't fair right now, hey, guys just aren't getting as much action, it's like, start individualizing this. It's like this individual guy that lives in California, that lives in such and such town and such demographic, was raised by such and such parents, has such and such job, and go through all his choices and all his life experiences, and then you can make an assessment. But just doing this, 28% of men in America, 28% of men in North America, I don't find it accurate. I find it misleading and triggering to a lot of people. The individuals that have issues need help, or they need to identify that they can help themselves. They need to get resourceful. But right now what's happening is it's just this constant like, yeah, man, it comes off as women are the problem. There's some bad women out there. Okay. I think society, culture, and content like this triggering people is the problem, to be quite honest. What's your individual problem as an individual human being? Stop identifying with all men and all women. That's idiotic. That's the thing. It's like if Rollo Tomassi or these groups, and I like Rollo's book originally, but these sensationalist movements of mass groups represent, men, don't speak for me. Well, 28% of all, like, how do you get to, well, in a study in the Washington Post, did you do the study? No. So how do you even know the variables of the study? Did you talk to the people in the study? No. I mean, this is what we have now. It's crap. And I'm going to show it in a reaction right here. But the reason why I'm mentioning it is I've just noticed the last year to 6 months, a lot of young guys in their 20s are identifying with it, and they're going, yeah, this is just what's happening. They all are using it as a reason that they can't climb out of the well, that dating's fixed, it's done, they have no chance. All right, do you know anyone that's overcome it? It's kind of like, look at it this way. It's like we can easily say, oh, all the rich people have all the money. Okay. The such and such top 10% of all earners have all the money. Okay. But there are some people that are born with nothing that become rich. They beat the odds. They make some right moves. They do some good choices. They have some good habits. They move to the right town. There's a lot of little things that go involved in that. It's like, if you want to be a Hollywood actor, you got to move to Hollywood. A lot of people that have gotten rich, they moved to the Bay Area, the Silicon Valley. They moved to New York City. There's more jobs. There's more opportunities. But what you have happening now, look, it's unfair. 28% of men are sexless in North America. It's just not right. Women need to understand this. All right, well, can I meet some of these individuals? You can't help 28% off a data point. Like, what's going into this? They're not all having the same problems, but that's what they would like to present to you. All right, let's get into the video right now. Let's see here.
28% of men showing zero sexual partners between the time
GSS studies.
Yeah, the GSS studies. Can we go over some of those? Because a lot, I show these to women and they're just like, I don't understand. What are you talking about? Every guy knows a whore. Every guy knows fucks.
Make sure you get all of them. Make sure you got all of them.
What are you talking about? The fucking VIP host I had sex with, he hasn't had 7 sexual partners. He's had 700. What are you talking about? And I'm like, hey, did you look at the guy who gave you your hamburger at Wendy's? Who's fucking him? Did you look at
Who's his soulmate?
Who's his soulmate? Did you look at the person, the cashier at Walmart? Would you have had sex with him? No, not only would you not have had sex with him, you didn't notice he existed. So when I show you this whole thing, 28% of men having 0 sexual partners in the last year, and you don't believe it, these 28% of men, you legitimately don't recognize.
This is the thing now, to bring up the most extreme example. So he goes, all right, if you look at the guy serving your burger at a fast food place, he's the one not having sex right now. Says who, you? A lot of those, like, this is just, oh, yeah, that's true. And then the other guy jumps on top of it. It's like, and then everyone goes, oh, yeah, it's not fair. It's not this. How do you know? It's like, how do you not know that guy might have a girlfriend at the place that's serving the burger? It's just this generalization. And by the way, the guy making that comment probably never served a burger at one of those restaurants. He probably doesn't give a shit about the guy serving the burger at the restaurant. So he's giving the example. Hey, you know that guy serving the burger at your place? He's never been. Says who, you? You know what? If that guy ends up with someone else, he probably will end up with another staff at the burger joint. But it's not a given. These are just sensationalist examples that can be true or not true. And then someone goes, ha, ha, ha. Yeah, that guy's not getting it for sure. Really? I bet if you went to like a Burger King and you went to one of these places, I bet there's a percentage of the guys that are hooking up with a woman. All right? Now, if that woman's up to your standards or not, I don't know. But just, yeah, 28% of the population. What does that even mean?
Recognize they exist. You wonder where Andrew Tate came from? It's because you ignored that they existed. Let's say everything Andrew Tate said is wrong and everything Red Pill is wrong. Let's just play devil's advocate. All of it's wrong. You think that these people just don't exist? You're going to wave your hand as a feminist and be like, well, fuck you, I don't agree with your opinion, therefore you disappear? Do you think they disappeared? Do you think that they don't have internet access? Do you think that they don't vote? They have no economic guidance whatsoever. Do you think that they don't have feelings, that they don't have testosterone, they don't have muscles, they don't have the ability to work, the ability to type?
Sounds a lot like female solipsism, doesn't it?
I mean, it's just a situation where, like, you have to admit that they existed. Now, let's go over these studies specifically. The one had to do with virginity, 27% of men. What was that? It was like between the 18 and 30. What was, do you remember those studies?
Okay, so the study was between, I want to say it was 2008 and 2018.
Yeah.
So, and it was part of the General Survey Study, which is like an American, so this is the United States here, okay? And it corresponds with the census at the time as well. So they take that every 10 years, as we know. So the stats basically show this, is that it was like 28% of men between 2008 and 2018 are literally having no sex, zero. Like no sexual partners, and it has astronomically risen since about 2010.
Well, 2007 is when you first see the hockey stick spike, and that is the year that the Facebook app was introduced to the iPhone.
It's also the year when white women started taking antidepressants at astronomical numbers as well. If you look at the spike in that, and what I've done, by the way, I have used that. Everybody in the manosphere has used that.
Yeah.
That stat. But what they don't do, that's one data point.
Yeah.
Okay. You have to take those data points and you have to like correlate them with other data points. So even from the same study, you can see that, and that's just 18 to 29. If you go and you look past 29 up until 45, men are still having less sex, even in those other demo. We don't care. Once you're past the 29 demographic, who gives a shit, right? But we see that, and we see that astronomical spike because those ones are the people those are the guys who are going to have the Arab Spring, right? But then when you look at women, and you see that it's jumped just a little bit. They're having less sex, but not nearly as much as like young men in the same demographic cohort, right? So when you look at that, how do we correlate, or how do we interpret that one data point? I interpret it as this, is that we have, of course, we're, in a social media environment right now.
There you
We're
go.
in a sexual marketplace that is globalized sexual marketplace.
Yeah.
We can literally see statistically hypergamy right there. Okay, so what happens is it depends on what your ideological bent is. So when I have heard like Matt Walsh or PragerU report these exact same numbers, you know what they're saying? Oh, it's because young women are fucking older guys. It's because they're having sex with older men who are more made, and they're more mature and whatever. And what that does is it feeds into the personal responsibility grift that they all promote. So it's like, well, if men would just take more responsibility and get off their asses and start being, better, then women would be better and you'd be getting laid, right? No. Women are sharing the hot alphas is what the fuck they're doing. Yeah. How about we talk about that? You will never hear that from Dennis Prager. You will never hear that from Daily Wire. You will never have that correlation made because it is unflattering to female nature. And we all think that to solve men's problems is to pile on more and more responsibility for those guys without having any authority in that as it is. But still, it points a really ugly finger at hypergamy being true. Here it is right here. It's not that these women want to fuck old dudes on yachts. They're fucking guys, and they're sharing that guy. Yeah. So we're and I made this point before. We were talking about promiscuity, and that's where I did the show on Tim Burkhead's book, and I talked about this. I said we're at a stage right now in society where women don't need men. They'll say this. Oh, sure. I don't need no man. I make my own money. I'm walk like the boss and talk like the boss. And they're very proud and very it's hubris is what it is. They get to that point. And they say, I don't need no man, but I want a man. Okay, what kind of man do you want? I want the guy who looks like Andrew Tate. I want the guy who looks like Jason Momoa. I want the guy who's going to give me the highest, hottest fucking sex I can get, who is the apex alpha, and hope.
Okay, so women, men. So let me just give you some individual situations. Being someone that's done breakup coaching for nearly 5 years now and talking to women and men of various ages in relationships. Now, someone might say, oh, you don't have the data points of 10,000 people, or you don't have, but I have real life primary sources interactions. Okay. So when he says, oh, all women want to be independent right now, no, some do. I've had clients that are 33, 34 that have professional jobs that want to have kids, want to get married, and the guy doesn't want to do it. I've had women and men that I would say aren't in a high value status, whether that's, let me just say, money wise or looks wise, status wise, and they're in breakups. Now, someone might go, well, why are you talking about that as a positive? Well, they're saying that these people have no chance of any relationship. They're completely sexless. And they're saying that because women are all going after the alpha guys, that's the problem. Now, this has been going on since the beginning of time. That women will flock to the alpha guy, the Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Brad Pitt, if available. Okay. And all the guys on the sidelines are just getting more and more screwed and sexless. I've had clients before that have less options and definitely date down to where they're at, right? And you're like, well, the breakup wasn't set. That's not what I'm arguing. This is being argued that 28% of North America is sexless, the men. Is it possible? Yeah, but what are the variables? Where do they live? Right? If someone lives in McCarthy, Alaska, which is a place of like 8 in population, and they're on the census, I mean, there's a lot of places that there's going to be less options, or there's going to be people that just desire to be sexless. But this idea that he's saying that one sect is saying that women are going after older men that have more money. He's saying, oh, all the men are just with the alpha. All the women are going after the alpha guys and sharing them. Is that possible and true? Yeah, but is it absolute, as in men and women? No. Has it been going on since the beginning of time? Yes. And by the way, men are going to pursue the women that are the highest value too. The amount of clients I get that are like, she's really hot or she's not. The amount of stuff that a guy will deal with in the name of a woman being hot. And here's the thing about this hotness thing. What you think's hot and what I think's hot is different. Now, what I'm going to say about this is my whole point, and this is like getting away from. For years, I've been talking about breakup stories and breakups. The reason why I'm getting into this is because it's really affecting a lot of guys right now, and they're just dropping their arms and they're just going, "I don't have any chance. The game's skewed. I'm screwed." So they don't. In other words, there's all this self-improvement. I need to work on my purpose, this and that. It's like, oh no. 28% of North America is sexless. All the women are independent. They're all going to end up with cats, and they just jump on these bandwagons, right? It's like, what do you want as an individual? Stop identifying with large groups and studies. Like, is it possible, if you really put your mind to it, you could get a woman? Is it possible that you could overcome your weight problem? Is it possible that you could become more of a catch in your environment? It's more possible than ever before. Than ever, you have more resources to be a better you than ever before in the world. And this is what's getting lost in this thing. It's like, well, and it's just feeding a narrative. Oh, so like a 25-year-old guy is going to take advice from 50-plus-year-old married Rollo Tomasi, who's been out of the game pursuing women for a long time, and just pounds this thing. Well, the data suggests. I'm not saying the data's even wrong. This is the crazy thing. They never show it on the screen and just break it down. We don't know these people who are answering these questions, because I can say right now, it's definitely not 28% of the absolute population of men. And that's the way it's been presented. 28% of men. All men? There's no way that you got a study that asked a question or a set of questions to all men in North America. There's no way. But this is the way it's being, all men right now, and they say it and that someone would say, well, what's the purpose of this? Because there's a large portion that want to identify with this and go, yeah, that's true. That's my problem. All right. But what's the... Have you ever met a guy and he just turned it around? I have, out of a breakup. I wouldn't be swallowing this content, because what you're saying is, it's just the game's stacked against you. It's just like I read some comments a few days ago, and this guy was like, dude, I literally dated hundreds of women and I finally found my wife. It took me a long time. It's like, well, good that you were picky and filtering for a good wife, but you found one, right? It's possible. This is suggesting that all these guys at the bottom have no chance. Did they have much of a chance before? But on the other end, like, who are we talking about as individuals? Why do we have to group them all in? Because if you show me an individual and you're like, oh, this guy works at a fast food place and he's saying that all women are pretentious and they don't want to talk to him, and I go and talk to him, I'm like, all right, so have you tried dating? It's like I had a client, this is about 2 or 3 years ago. This guy was Indian descent. When I say that, I mean he was in America as a student in a master's program in New York City, living in a bad area because that's all he could afford. Living in a really bad area. And he was like, man, and he had an Indian accent and he was very conscious of it. But he dressed cool. He had he was in his early 20s. He went to the gym. Smart guy, really smart guy. And he was like, man, I have no chance here, coach. Like, I keep going to the nightclubs. And I'm like, well, do something beside the nightclubs. Because the nightclubs isn't a good scene for you. You don't really drink that much. You're not, you know what I mean? It's not working. Go to another scene. So we did some other things. Then he was doing a job where he was delivering packages like on a bicycle. I said, well, if you want to get your English a little bit better and smoother and your interactions better, then get a job where you interact with people as part of your job. Well, the other job pays me a little less. It was like selling T-shirts for a tourist stand or something. This is years back. Maybe more than 2 years. Maybe it was like 4 years back. And so he took my advice. He took the job immediately. He's like, man, I'm just meeting so many more people. My English is better. I just approach people better. I'm like, yeah, because it's your job, right? You have an excuse. Within 6 months of changing that job, and that had nothing to do with making more money, just the fact that he was able to get more social skills, then he met a guy through that job that was really good with women and just told him, hey, man, it's just a numbers game. Just approach more women and you'll do well and deal with rejection better. Contacted him months later. He's like, man, I'm fine. I figured it out. This guy was beside himself. He would be at the bottom. He was sexless. He was struggling. I think he hadn't hooked up with a girl for a year. But he was looking for answers and solutions. And look, here's the thing. It's like discussing all this data and these data points. It's like it gets away from the individuals with their problems, because I can tell you this right now. It's not just some broad problem with women. These guys as individuals, if they're not hooking up or they're not meeting women, now, if their standards are too high and they work at a fast food place and they're looking for a corporate lawyer, well, then everyone knows that, right? But you're saying that the guy that's at the fast food restaurant, I'm only using this as an example because it was used in the video. The guy said, you know that guy making your burger, you imagine he has no chance with women right now. Says who? You? I mean, he's probably going to have a limited opportunity with certain sector of women, but other people that do that job would be one. I mean, these examples, and then people go, yeah, it's true. It's not. Show me the individuals. And then talk to the individuals. Do they want to change? Do they want to, what actually happened? And it's way more than the data. Because people that aren't good, guys that aren't good with women, way deeper. They have issues with their parents. They might have been sexually abused. When you just go, oh, all men. It's like, well, what happened to the individuals that you're talking about? Oh, we couldn't do that. That'd be too specific. You're making it sound like this is a plague. And it's real. It's more prevalent. But the problem is the content that's being put out there that's saying, yeah, man, and it's just feeding on this. It's like that guy, like I said, this guy has an Indian accent, was uncomfortable, unconfident, was on his computer a lot, changed his job, which I suggest, like sometimes it's just a small change. It's not always money. Now, what the problem is everyone's going, oh, yeah, in America, as if the world revolves around America. And here's the thing. Whenever someone generalizes about America, remember this. There's 50 states. They all have different laws. There's different major cities. There's the East Coast, the West Coast. There's Texas. There's Alaska. I've met people from Alaska. It's different. Different subculture. Not bad people. Different. I've lived in San Diego. I've lived in the Bay Area. Very different. Different landscape if you're dating. It's like, so whenever we go, oh, in America, this has happened. Where? What city? What town? Right? If a guy, I always come back to like fishing, right? If a guy has a local lake and he learns what bait works and he knows what kind of fish he's going fishing for, he's usually pretty successful. It's like, how did that guy become such a great fisherman? Well, he fished a lot. He learned this. He learned the place because he lives close by. He learned what bait to use, and he knows what he's fishing for. It's like some of these guys that they're mentioning that they're like, oh, it's the women aren't making themselves available. Some of these guys are video game addicts. There's a lot of, the problem below this, drug addicts, full-blown drug addicts, this fentanyl and all these other. I'm not a specialist in that. So what's affecting this beyond just the things that they're talking about? It's way more variables. The only reason I'm going into this, it's starting to bug me, is I'm getting clients that are guys in their 20s that are completely healthy, that have read books on attraction, were pretty good with women. They were. And now that they've swallowed all this content up, they're like, oh shit, the game's rigged. It's like the minute you think that the game's rigged, why play? Think about that for a minute. If I'm going to play, it's like the NBA years back. They kind of swept it under the table. They had a crooked referee. It's a big deal. If you have a referee that's taking payments from a bookie to fix the games, it's not a fair game. Period. It's like this guy had an objective for one team to win and one to not. It's not fair. Human beings don't like that. It's not fair. All right. But if you think like it's impossible for me to win, well, you're not even going to play. But there's this whole support group, and you know what it is too? Once the guys lock into that content, they have to keep watching the content to support this belief because it makes them feel better. All the while, there's some guys out there that have been at the bottom of the barrel serving the burgers, as you said, right? And they're like, I don't want this anymore. I've met them. I've met these guys. I've dealt with them in coaching. I want to fix this. I've met guys that a lot of guys would go, oh, wow, he probably doesn't do really well with women. But he's just coming out of a relationship, out of a breakup. And guess what? The girl he was with was not highly above him. And they had some kind of good relationship and it didn't work out. This whole idea, though, it's like all men, it's really damaging. Because then you just think the game's rigged. I'm not even going to try. My point is, I'm not saying that Rollo Tomasi or whoever this host is of this show is wrong completely. Okay? I'm saying to generalize about all men and all America and all women and women are this and men are that and all the women are flocking to all the alpha males now. Give me some real examples. And I could probably find examples where, I mean, how many times in your individual life, and put this in the comments, have you known a guy that was quote unquote a nerd, a geek, not that cool, and then you met the guy's girlfriend, you're like, that's your girlfriend, dude? And if you were at a good place in your life, you're like, fuck yeah, man, right on. Like you're impressed, like you're surprised, pleasantly surprised. If you're at a bad place in your life, you're like, yeah, she's just using him. She's just using him. She's not really into him. There's no way she could be really into him. That's how people think. Now, what is it possible? I've seen it before many times. It's not that impossible. It's not that surprising. Usually the guy met her at work or some common thing. It's like this client of mine I had a while back. I think he was like a security guard in a major city, late 20s, a little bit heavier set. And he was really into like comic books, right? Nice guy, almost too nice, right? He had a girlfriend. Came to me for the breakup. You know, they were together for like 2 or 3 years. And they were into the con festivals, I think they call them, where they dress up as like Star Wars characters and stuff. And someone's like, oh, yeah. It's like, that's a good place to meet other people like him. And someone's like, oh, well, he broke up. She left him, right? They broke up on, average breakup terms. My point is he wasn't sexless. But he also probably wasn't with someone that was a 10, that was an Instagram model. But this idea that these guys have like no chance now, show me the individuals. Let me talk to them. Let me just identify the reasons. The reasons aren't that all the women are going after alpha guys. That's not true. It's true in certain areas, in certain arenas, yes. But what's this idea that you just throw around this term alpha? What does define alpha? Well, you know what alpha means. What does it mean to you? Like to me, and this high value men thing, it's like, what's high value? Well, you know what a high value, what is it to you? Like some women would say, oh, I'd have no problem dating a guy 20, 30 years older if he made a lot of money. And then someone else go, yeah, that's how all women are. No, they're not. There's plenty of women that go, I could never date a guy that was 5 years older than me. Everyone has their own little rules, their own little things. Hypergamy is true. Most women want to date up or higher, beginning of time. How they identify what's medium or what's their level and up is probably going to be different, right? For one girl, it might be like, oh, I think he's good looking. For another girl, he's got to make money to be higher than me. It's going to be different for different people. And that's why if you start identifying with, well, all men, all women, that's me, take another step and go like, all right, who am I as an individual? Stop doing this, please. If you have bad results and you're identifying with the negative side of those results, if you're saying like, I can't get women and I found all this content online to support why I can't get women, go back on and switch the search to, if I was going to be successful, is there any solutions to this problem? All right, so I'm gonna show you a little bit more of this video, and then I'm gonna show you a data scientist, and I've talked about this before, that talks about, hey, if you're not one of the Brad Pitts or the good-looking guys, technically, here's some good news for you. I'm gonna get to that one in a minute. He collects data all the time, right? Let me watch a little bit more of this first.
Hopefully I'll be able to lock him down, but if I can't, I'm more than willing to share that guy, either directly or indirectly, whether I cop to it or I don't. And so what you're seeing right now is you're seeing a reversal and a sort of a return to polygamy, but it's not men that are doing it. It's women who see that as the only choice for the men they want to get with, because they don't need those beta men who are in that 28% right there. They don't need those guys anymore for provisioning, protection, or parental investment, because either they've got a college degree, they've got a business degree, they've got a business themselves, they've pretty much settled, or perceptually, they've settled the idea that I don't need a man for the beta buck side of hypergamy. So the only thing that's left is fucking Jason Momoa and the Cannon Party.
So let's talk about this. Women are always shocked whenever I bring this up, right? The average North American male has had 7 sexual partners in his entire life. So let's look at this from a statistical standpoint. We know that first 28% of men are at 0, right? And then when we get to the average, the mean, we're at 7. So let's keep graphing this out. Now we're at 7. Let's just say this top 60th percentile, we have had 7 sexual partners. Once we get to the 80th percentile, we're talking 400 sexual partners. Once we get to the 90th percentile, we're talking about like Bilzerian, we're talking about 1,400, 1,500 sexual partners. For men, it looks like a hockey stick. It literally goes like flat, and then it's a little bit, and then once you get above this certain style where you're like in the top 10% of earners, you're good looking, whatever, the number of sexual partners happens. I'm not trying to be an asshole, and I'm not trying to be arrogant. Let me tell you from firsthand experience, this is absolutely true, because I've been on both sides of the scale. It's not, you don't have a few more partners. It is unbelievably, it's 10-to-1 difference. So when you see this spike that happens, I don't blame women for this. I understand. What happens is, let's look at Amazon. Remember back in 1985, we would go to the hardware store for our hardware. We would go to the diaper store. We would go to a different store. We'd go to the nursery for our plant shit. We would go to different stores for different things.
Go to Blockbuster for our videos.
Blockbuster for our videos. Now we go to Amazon for everything. So we see how the internet globalized purchasing. Now we almost all go to one place for all of our shit. Why do you think that was going to happen any differently with dating? Of course, it's the same thing. Okay, I'm telling you. I was talking to Bilzerian. He said like something like 50% of the women he's been with are in relationships. Currently in relationships when they have sex with him. Like this idea that like it really is like what you said before. There is this group of men at the top that are having all the sexual access, and then there's this group of men at the bottom who aren't. And this is not a cultural thing. This has happened throughout history.
Biological, evolutionary.
Evolutionary. Mubarak the bloodthirsty, 888 children. You know what I'm talking about, right? From Morocco. Read about him. This whole idea. Now here's the thing. Here's where I differ from a lot of guys. Okay, not all of them, but that 28%. My whole thing is don't hate the game. Get in the fucking gym.
Get in the game. Be a player and not an average dude.
Know that if this top 10% is the one that's winning, do everything in your power short of death to get there. How much does it mean to you to get in that top 10%? Nobody loves women more than me. Women are the way they are. You can tell me women like status and like guys who are taller than shorter. Have I gone to a party, been with a hot girl, and she walks off with some dude who's a male stripper? Of course it's happened to me. It sucks. Doesn't make me hate women. It's just evolution.
You got swooped on.
I got swooped on. So you know what? I'm gonna hit that motherfucking bench press next week, and I'm
Don't wish it were easier. Wish you were better.
Yeah, wish you were better. Don't wish it was easier, because it's not easier. If you wish it easier, that's when I see these dudes, like I said before, moving to Panama, moving to fucking Eastern Europe, and they're just I don't want to give up. But you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. And so, as I was saying before, when you look, I've done several shows on the GSS study. When you look at those stats, you have to correlate them against other stats that really, like you say, okay, it was 2008 to 2018. What else happened during that time? Well, if you look at how college enrollment rates have declined for men and have skyrocketed for women. And by the way, I think one of the big mistakes that we make right now is I always hear the stat of how it's 60% women and 40% men in college enrollment. Yes, enrollment, not in graduation. Enrollment. And we're having this conversation now because Biden decided he wanted to forgive like $10,000 of student debt, which of course 2/3 of that is owned by women. Okay. But that's for graduation. If you look at graduation rates, my daughter just graduated from UNLV, right? She's got a master's degree. I went and I looked at the stats, you know, being me, right, to see what the gender differential was. It was like 68 or almost 70% women and 30% guys were graduating with a master's or above, like a doctorate as well. And I thought, well, that kind of like puts things.
So right here, well, this happened to me. This happened to me. My daughter just this is all just personal, anecdotal stuff. But what they get into is, you know, be your best as a guy. They come back to be your best as a guy, do your best as a guy. What's the point of all this data and this research, right? The point to me is, if you're watching it, please assess yourself as an individual. Like, where are you at as an individual? Because these guys are like, oh yeah, this friend of mine, this person I knew, this person I had on the show, this is what happened to me, this is what happened to you, this is what you should do. It's like, where are you as an individual? Where do you live? Like, what is it that you want? Rather than, oh yeah, this is the way it is. All right, so let me show you a different video here. A data scientist has about dating right now.
Being successful in dating then?
There are like a lot of different lessons. Okay, so one of them is from, I love this. People may have heard of it, but if you haven't, you need to know it. Christian Rudder wrote this excellent book, Dataclism, and he made the point that the most successful daters are like, the very most successful daters are exactly who you'd expect. They're like Brad Pitt and Natalie Portman, just beautiful people, and they just get like, it's depressing how much better they do than the average person. But then like there are these daters that do shockingly well, and they're people with extreme looks, like people who shave their head, like heterosexual women who shave their head or have crazy glasses or blue hair or all these things. And the point is, in dating, you want to be polarizing. So if you're Brad Pitt or Natalie Portman, you just want to be yourself and not scare anybody. Just like play it very safe, let the goodies flood to you. But if you are not Natalie Portman or Brad Pitt, or you're not like conventionally the most attractive person, you got to kind of lean into some extreme version of yourself. And then some people will be totally turned off, but some people will be really into you. And that's kind of that's all that matters. You just need some people to be really into you. And I kind of did that in my own life, because I think it's not going to surprise anybody that like I'm pretty nerdy. I mean, anybody who read Don't Trust Your Gut would be like, this guy's pretty nerdy. Like there's this one study where they list they have a chart with how much happiness every activity gives people. And I literally ordered an iPhone case with that chart on it so I can look at the data when I'm deciding what to do with things. So I'm like the nerdiest, like I'm maybe one of the nerdiest people, you know, anybody's encountered. And I think when I was single, like a lot of nerds, I'm like, well, what do I do to, you know, I'm heterosexual, to attract women. And I'm like, okay, well, I gotta, tone it down, be less nerdy, get rid of the glasses, get like, stop talking about the charts and the tables and the math, and talk more about what you're taught that the average woman is into. And I think the data suggests the exact opposite. Like, nerd it up, go all in on who you are, and then you'll just be polarizing. But in dating, you don't want to be like average to people. You want to be like the extreme, something that's the most appealing.
Well, because you're not optimizing for total area under the curve, are you? You only need a couple of winners.
And exactly. And I like how you think a couple of winners.
Well, you gotta have a variety, right?
Polyamorous. No, I'm monogamous, so I was just looking for one winner. But and my girlfriend, literally, she was talking to her friends, and they're like, "What's your type?" And everyone was going through their type, like tall, dark, and handsome, this, that. And she's like, "My type is nerdy." Like, that was her type. And she's not even that nerdy herself. Her type was nerdy. And then, and here I am. If I had not played up my nerdiness, I wouldn't have had a chance. And I think the thing that the other big dating thing is, you got to put yourself out there way more. So they've done these studies on like what happens when people of different attractiveness or desirability ratings message someone else on an online dating site. So like, what happens when a 1 messages 10 on an online dating site? And before I saw the data, I'm like, this is a bloodbath. This is like a 1 asking out of 10. I mean, or messaging 10. We're talking about like a 1 in a million, a 1 in a billion. Like, come on, like that's not going to happen. And the data says for a heterosexual man, 1 asking out a heterosexual 10, it's like 14%. And for a heterosexual woman asking out going after a heterosexual man, it's like 30%. So like, when you actually do the math, the key to getting, like, if you want to date out of your league, which I don't necessarily recommend, because I also have in a section how conventional attraction is the most overvalued thing in the dating market. But let's be honest, everybody's trying to everybody is curious, how can I date someone who's way more beautiful or way more desirable than me? And I think it's a combination of being an extreme version of yourself and then asking tons of people out. Because like, if you have a 14% chance on one go, then you actually do the math. If you ask like 30 people out, you have like a 98% chance. So like, all you got to do is just keep on going after it. And a lot of people are going to be like, no. And eventually you're going to get your yes. And then there are other things. I could keep going.
What was the insight around physical attractiveness and happiness?
Yeah, so they've done studies of like 11,000 couples, and they tried to predict what predicts romantic happiness. So Samantha Joel led this study, and it's like a revolutionary study of romantic happiness. They used machine learning models. There were 86 scientists studying it. Like 11,000 couples. They had hundreds of variables, like anything you could consider a test. And the first thing is, it's very hard in general to predict who's happy. Like, the predictive models are just way worse than you might imagine. It's not like predicting like the weather tomorrow or something. It's like predicting the weather in like 3 years. Like, it's harder than you'd guess. But that said, the things that do have at least some predictive power, whether I'm happy with someone else, whether a particular person has someone else, the qualities of the other person that seem to have some predictive power are like these psychological variables. So secure attachment style, growth mindset, conscientiousness, satisfaction with life, kind of like good psychological variables. And the things that have like basically no predictive power are a lot of superficial things. So conventional attractiveness, the height of your partner, the particular occupation of your partner, many things like that. And
so all of the things that online apps optimize for on the front end. Yeah.
So I think like the major insight from the data on dating and romance is there's just a total disconnect between what people are trying to, like, what people are swiping for or trying to date, and what actually makes people happy. will people change based on knowing that? I don't know. I think it may be coded in our DNA that we're drawn to, like beauty and height and status, and but like if you can, I really do recommend overruling some of those instincts, because they're really not a path to long-term happiness. And like the other thing is you have to think is that the competition for these traits is so enormous that like even if you win over someone, like if you win over someone who is this great beauty, or a woman, every woman's there. I think the data is 85% of women, or I don't remember the exact number, have like 6 foot or above on Bumble or whatever it is. It's some insane.
Which I think is only 14% of men in the US.
Yeah, and it's like, and like, so the competition for these people is ferocious. And you have to think that first of all, if you try to date these people, you may spend a huge percent of your life single and complaining that you're single. Like, I think a lot of people who are perpetually single, they're trying to date the small number of people that everybody's trying to date. And number two, if you do win them over, you may find that they are like that there's a reason that they were single, even though they have all these traits that everybody's desiring. So maybe their psychological traits are a little bit subpar.
Well, I would love to see the physical characteristics mapped with the psychological traits. What are the correlates between, are taller people on average more conscientious or more industrious or more balanced? Because that would be fascinating to see.
How do they even measure all this? I mean, it's just exhausting to hear how they measure all this. Like, who's a 10, who's a 1? How would you even get to that point of who's 1 and who's 10? Who would be a part of a study and go, oh, I'll enter it, even though I'm the 1 and I'm pursuing the 10s? It's like, it's pretty self-deprecating, isn't it? I mean, bottom line is that gives you some good things. That extreme edges, like that guy's a nerdy guy. He's smart, right? And he's saying, I owned it. And a woman likes nerds. There's clients of mine that have said they like nerdy guys. Obviously, people, women and men that are highly good looking get more attention. This idea, though, I just titled this How to Date Hot Women, because this is a big thing for some of my younger clients. It's like they're really focused on that. And it's fine, but he made a good point too, that going just for that and ignoring some personality traits or character traits because you can fall in love with someone that you spend a lot of time with and you do a lot of important stuff with over your life. So someone was asking me, well, how do people end up in bad relationships, or how do they end up in these? And it's like, well, they're not filtering as well, right? I'm good. They're not filtering as well as what it is. But also, someone can have met someone that they were highly attracted to. They get together, and then over time they get to know them and they deal with their unfavorable characteristics. But after being with them for 2 years, there's some built-in love there. They complain about the unfavorable characteristics, but they were there the whole time. Right? But I think that one thing that's happening, and Clutch, right now I've been noticing, because I've just been on YouTube a little bit more, kind of looking for different reaction videos and different things. I'm just playing with this a little bit. There's just like you could sit and take a viewpoint, and all of a sudden, if you're doing bad in the dating game, let's just say you've hit a dry streak. No pun intended. And you haven't hooked up for, a month or 2 months, which is very possible for human beings. It could be a variable if you've been working a lot, you're kind of down. Like, it's possible. People go through dry spells. It's fine. But then they come across some content that supports that women don't like you anymore and you don't make enough money. And then you watch 15 of those videos and all of a sudden you're like, I'm not even going to date anymore. These women are only looking for 6 foot and up, and I'm 5'3". I've had so many clients that have told me recently that are men that are like, actually, I'm only 5'5". I'm like this height thing. They feel like they're a leper. I'm like, I've just never, and all it is that content is exposing these numbers. Like they just said, well, it says on Tinder or Bumble that 80% of women are clicking for 6 foot or over. Well, I mean, probably if you gave guys the choice of, I want to be with women that have at least a B bra size or a C bra size, and that was a choice, then they would probably click it. Would the guy settle for less than that? Yes. If she had a cute smile. I don't know. But like, you hear all this stuff and then you start identifying with it. You start identifying with it and everyone thinks it's absolutely true. And it's like, start individualizing this. All these shows, like The Rational Male, all this, they get these data points and they just sensationalize the hell out of it. And then, like I said, a lot of my younger clients, they're just like, man, and I'm actually only 5'8". It's like, what? Where did that come from? Yeah, I'm getting old. I'm 26. It's like, who told you you're getting what? This is why it's good to get individual coaching or talk to someone to get in touch with you as an individual. I mean, really, if you're going, I just had a client yesterday. I haven't talked to him in over 3-4 years. And he's like going through a little bit of a rough patch. He's like, I'm like, this is the time to talk. Absolutely. Don't let it fester. Don't let it go on for months. Let's talk about it. Something just happened with a female that he was seeing. He's got some insecurities. He's got some things about work. We talked for like an hour and a half. Like, yeah, let's talk about your individual situation, dude. Let's talk about your problems. Let's see if we can figure out some solutions. Let's see if we can reframe some things. Let's see if we can get you a new perspective. What happens is you go online, you're feeling down, you press on one video that supports an excuse for feeling down, like, oh, I'm 5'8", that's why I haven't been getting with girls for the last 2 months. What? How many 5'8" guys out there have girlfriends or wives? It's like, come on, man. It's starting to bug me a little bit. And it's been, the crazy part, this has just been the last year and a half that this has happened. This stuff's been out there, but now people are, it's just so inundated. I'm 5'8", I'm perfectly content with my dating experience. I mean, it comes up a lot, Clutch, a lot. This is like, and they'll throw it in kind of like, yeah, well, I'm 5'8", I'm 5'7", I'm 5'5". It's like, all right. It's impossible. You've been watching all these videos that says that that's what women are filtering for. It's like if you're a woman and you're like, oh, I don't have much of a chest, I don't have a chance. It's like, all right, and men would say, oh, it's different for women. I don't know. It's like your limitations and your beliefs are completely up to you. Right, Flynn says, I'm 5'8" and dated guys 5'5". All right, there's just one other video that I was going to show. Let's see if there's anything else in this one first.
It actually could be that in order to be with someone who's hot, you need to sacrifice being with someone who's psychologically, it's probably not likely, right? They're probably pretty just randomly spread, but that could be the case.
I think if you're not hot and you want to date someone hot, then you probably do have to sacrifice.
Yeah. Well,
if you're hot yourself, then you're probably like, okay, it's somewhat of a market. You're probably in better.
You
shape,
can always date across and down. Yeah. Well, the interesting thing there is what you're kind of saying is similar to what John Burgess says in Make the First Move, where it's not lowering your standards, it's changing what your standards consist of. Because what you're saying is that what you think your standards should be aren't what they should be. you're optimizing for the wrong parameters. What you're optimizing for is something like height and job title and a bunch of things which aren't going to impact the thing that you ultimately want, which is long-term relationship happiness. What you need to do.
Okay, so here's my advice for everyone in the cheap seats, okay? Focus on yourself. Right? No offense to Chris Williamson, or you need to do this. You need to do this. What you need to do is, what you need to do is this. What you need to do is this. What you need to do is this. Okay, this is my advice for what you need to do for everyone's watching this channel right now. Figure out what you as an individual want. Figure out what you as an individual offer. Figure out what you as an individual find is hot. It's like, how many people have thrown around like, oh, it's a 10. That person's a 10. Oh, that person's hot. How many people do you know that characterize someone as hot or a 10 and that doesn't line up with your scale? It's just endless. Well, you need to do this. You need to do that. It's like, well, figure out what you want, man. Figure out where your holes are. It's like if you listen to some of these videos long enough, all of a sudden you're like, well, I guess I guess I have no chance because of my height. I guess all women just go after the alpha males. That's the big one. They're all after the alpha males. It's like, I think they've always liked the alpha males. So you're just gonna. So the answer is like, become an alpha male, or this data analyst is like, own who you are, right? One thing that never gets mentioned: know the environment you're in. Said that a million times, right? It's like, that's a big one that gets lost. It's like Rollo Tomasi, right? This is an amazing thing about Rollo Tomasi, right? And like I've said, full disclosure, Rational Male, when I first heard it on I thought it was a good book. I still think that there's some good points in there, and there's some good things about attraction, absolutely. What's happened with the personality on the YouTube is pretty interesting. The fact that he knows his body count's 41, so he counted those. I was just talking to someone about that recently. I'm like, how did he keep track of that? I'm not saying that that's an unbelievable number. Not saying that at all. I'm just saying that. So did you plan on being this author that would have this? Because he'll be like, I've been with 41 or 42, I think is his number. Right? Not saying it's not true. Not saying it's not possible. I'm just like, how did you know? Did you tally that in a journal? And then he lived in LA and was in a rock group. Does that help out a little bit? Probably. But here's the thing that gets lost in all this information if you're going to follow anyone when it comes to these kinds of things. And that's why I have a client that I just talked to earlier today. It's a big Corey Wayne disciple, and he read his book 17 times. And you know what? To be honest, he follows a lot of his dating advice, and the dating advice is solution-based. It's about dating, so it's like principles. Where the stuff that I'm talking about here is like, oh, well, there's some principles, but then there's some examples of the principles like, oh, yeah, you know, I was with 41 women. I was kind of like a wedding singer, you know, like a cover band, and I was with 41 women. It's like, but no one gets to see who you were with. That's the killer question, right? If we lined up all 41, would they be 10s? Would they be high value? Would there be some ones in there where people go, oh, wow. It's like, that's what gets lost in all these conquests, right? That's what gets lost in it. If you have that big a number, they're not all braggable, I'm sure. They weren't all good. All right, one more to close it out. Recently, I've been seeing this come up in my feed that all these Michaela Peterson, which is Jordan Peterson's daughter. And now she's doing things about women and dating. And I was just talking to a friend today. I'm like, geez. You know what I noticed, Clutch, if you're still on, is like being in this breakup space for a while and talking to people about the relationships, you gain a lot of knowledge by talking to, like I said, primary sources, people that are actually in relationships. Personal situations, gain a lot of knowledge. But I'm noticing people that are influencers with big audiences, even if it's because of their dad, they're giving information on everything. So they now throw out information on breakups and relationships, and it's like it's just regurgitated surface information. It's you hear it and you're like, oh, someone just regurgitated doing no contact or doing these things, but they really aren't taking into account that they're just trying to feed the masses with surface information. So let me just show you this little short that I just saw today. Here we go. Looks a little different than her dad.
Negatives associated with being in a relationship are overblown. The negatives associated, this really makes me unhappy. The negatives associated with having kids, where it's like when I got pregnant with Scarlett, one of my friends, like good friends, was like, your life is over. Or this is the biggest mistake you'll ever make. Why is that the narrative that people are used to now? I don't think that was the narrative people are used to in the 60s. It was like, oh, you're having a baby. That's a miracle. And now it's like, your life is over because what, you can't go do cocaine on the weekends? Like, what is happening? People don't really want to settle down, it kind of seems like. Or the negatives associated.
See, this anecdotal, this is what happened to me, and this is what's happening to all people. No, it's not. And then everyone goes, oh, yeah, that's horrible. That's the way people talk. It's like, there's some people out there that would be happy for you that you're having a kid. Treat the individual situation. Stop generalizing. Get advice from people living the life you want. I don't think Petersons are the best role models right now. It's just stuff like that. Oh, there's this big thing going around that people are negative about people having kids. It's like, how general is that statement? And then someone that's a fan of this show will go, oh, yeah, that's so true. And they'll just piggyback onto it. It's like, is it true to you? Like, if I had a friend right now at my age and my life experience, and they got in a situation where they had an unexpected pregnancy, let's just put it that way, I would never say like, oh, your life is over now. So no, not everyone says that. That's my point. But looks like some of your friends said it to you, so now you're like, why are all these people like this? Not all these people are like this. Can we discuss who the friend was that said this? This is my issue right now. And then people eat the content up and they're like, oh my God, everyone's against people having kids now. No. It's just endless. Endless. I'm going to get back to doing stories again. This kind of stuff's interesting, but when I go out and look for the reaction videos, sometimes I can see how people get, all the stuff is like, I think it's almost like they're trying to trigger you, the polarization of it. All men are like this, all women are like this. It's like, no, the minute you disagree, they got you. The minute you're interested, the minute you're engaged in a point of view that's either all for or all against, they got you. And so it's like I said, I'm going to get back to the stories and reviewing those, because helping out individuals, talking about individual situations has a lot more value, because what you're doing is you're just producing a lot more sheep. Oh yeah, well and so said this, and they have, Michaela has 700,000 views and her dad's Jordan Peterson, so it must be true. No, it's just Michaela's little experience where one of her friends said her life was over when she was in her early 20s, and now she's telling everyone, why are all people negative about when you have kids? No, just your friend said that to you, and some other people might say it, but not all people are like that. It's endless. Endless. And like I said, one of the reasons I'm getting into this today, I'm just seeing a lot more people. I don't know if this is the case for you, Clutch, and they're just relating to this stuff. I'm like, we're like more than ever. Young men are like here's what they're doing. And Clutch, we might have to get a show together and talk about this, because you were in the pickup artist community. I don't know the specifics of how deep you were into it, but a couple years and whatnot, you identify with that as part of your life at one point. But there's these guys that are like, they took a shot at being, spinning plates and having multiple women. And then what happens is something happened. They went through a dry spell. They had some things go down, and then they get down on themselves and they just blame it on society and the women, and then they're like out. But it's like, what were you trying to do? What do you want? What do you want? You want a girlfriend or you want this? And they get caught in between. And then, like I said, when things go wrong, it's like, oh, you know what? Actually, the game's rigged. It's basically the way I see it. All right, folks, we had a shorter one today. Well, 1 hour, I guess. Kind of just carried on, though. Clutch, good to see you, bud. I guess you had some kind of surgery. I think you mentioned before. I hope you're doing all right. Sabina, good to see you. Rye Flint, always a pleasure. Oh, man, so much on height, money. I usually say the same thing. Do you want someone that superficial? Sloan Magnum says, I don't understand the obsession with men or women looking for a bunch of sexual partners. It's kind of gross to me. I think that there's a place when, Sloan, that, how should I say this? There's a lot of people that are over compensating for lost time. So if you were bad with women at some point, or you didn't have a lot of partners because you were the small kid in high school, or, like there's a lot of people that you could see this with people you went to high school with or your hometown. This is a good example. Like someone from elementary school, and you're like, oh, they were a total nerd, wallflower. And I mean that with compassion. I don't mean that with like, ha, 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 right? There's just, and then you see them and they're like 33 and they got a gold chain around their neck and they're like, got some plastic surgery, and they're like, oh, I changed my life and all this other stuff. And you're like, wow, big overcompensation. Like, because what they were trying to do is like reverse the tide, but then they overdid it because they still think they're that wallflower. You know what I'm saying? It's an overcompensation. And sometimes with dating, if you were in a dry spell for a long time, you want to experience it. You want to sow your oats. Justin Brown, how you doing? Always rolling. Good to see you, buddy. All right, stay well, everyone. Stay strong. Stay you. I'll be back on deck tomorrow. We'll have some stories on deck for sure. Have some in the lineup. I just had to talk about this today because I'm so tired of it.